A senior day to remember for Tennessee football as the Vols beat UTEP 56-0 to rebound from their loss to the Georgia Bulldogs last week. And more importantly, a bunch of other games that were happening the same time broke directly in UT's favor. Welcome to the last look with Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. I am Caleb Calhoun with Off the Hook Sports. Dave Hooker could not do the post-game show with us today, guys, so it will just be me and you guys. I'm really interested in y'all's feedback from the game. It was an absolute epic showing for Tennessee. It was an epic everything, and it didn't look like that at first. As we all know, Tennessee was held to a scoreless first quarter. Really, really ugly football in that first quarter. And a lot of factors were at play when that happened. But they regrouped. They scored touchdowns on 7 of their next 9 possessions going into the second quarter through the third and the fourth quarter. They were all huge, huge, huge. And on top of that, the defense made big play after big play. And that's how Tennessee walked away with a 56-0 win. Most importantly, at that same time, Ohio State made it very clear that Indiana is not a college football playoff team. Ohio State beat Indiana 38-15 and probably could have won that game 56-0, 56-7, because Indiana did score on the first early, and I don't think Ohio State allowed that. But from there on, Ohio State dominated. Indiana, I think, had 150 yards of total offense. It was an absolute abysmal showing by the Hoosiers. That should help Tennessee get into the college football playoff because, as we know, Indiana, although that's their only loss, it's the only quality team they've played all year. They haven't played a team. They've played one other team with a winning record, and I think that team's going to finish one game above 500. So that was crazy. But more importantly, that was just murky. To make it clear as day, Florida upset Ole Miss. The most important thing for Tennessee happened. By upsetting Ole Miss, the Gators gave Lane Kiffin's team his third loss. And most notably on that, so Ole Miss is out, and they were the – let me back up for a minute. I'm sorry, guys. Tennessee came in number 11 in the college football playoff rankings this weekend. Because of auto bids, they would have been the 13th seed, the first out. By Ole Miss losing, they are officially in. And Florida beating Ole Miss also makes them look like a quality win for Tennessee now as they just clinched their first bowl berth under Billy Napier. So Tennessee is all but assured a college football playoff bid, provided they beat the Vanderbilt Commodores next week, which is not a guarantee. Vanderbilt is 6-4. As we say this, although they do play LSU today. But the point is, Tennessee had an amazing afternoon. They completed their second undefeated home regular season in 3 years. The only other time the previous 20 they had gone undefeated at home was 2007. Matter of fact, I can go back. I can go even deeper than that. From 2000 to 2021, a 22-year period. 2007 was the only year they went undefeated at home in the regular season. And so there was just a great way all the way around for these seniors to finish today. They're back in the college football playoffs, so more meaningful games to play. They win a big game. Well, they win a game against UTEP in big fashion. Everybody should be happy on this. It was just a legendary day for Tennessee and one to remember, even though it was against UTEP. Again, if you're just joining us, Dave could not join us for the post-game special, so it's just me, Caleb Calhoun with Off the Hook Sports. Before we dive into a few weeds, I want to point out Last Look is brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn.
To visit cctis.com. The information you need is easy to access, and setting an appointment is as simple as clicking the tab. Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn, and Eye Care Optical at cctis.com. Simply the best.
All right, wanted to get to a few things. Let's talk about the college football playoff first. So where is Tennessee standing in that? Well, a lot else can happen. There's still Notre Dame Army as we finish this game. There's still Penn State and Minnesota. But truth be told, with Indiana losing and with Ole Miss losing, it's a very safe bet that not only is the playoff on the table for Tennessee, they control their destiny for that. But guys, a home playoff berth is on the table for Tennessee. There's a lot of ways that could happen too. So this may not be Tennessee's last game at Neyland Stadium this year. They could very well get a home playoff game. But again, they have to go to Vanderbilt and beat Vanderbilt next week, and that's not the easiest thing given what Vanderbilt's doing. So it was obviously a great day for Tennessee. Now, let's get to a few things related to the game because there's a lot to talk about with what happened in the game itself. As you guys know, it was a scoreless first quarter, and I'm going to get to the turning point of the game. What happened? It was a scoreless first quarter, and let's be honest, you thought, oh, what could go wrong will, and battered Vols syndrome kicked in, and you were certainly sure that Tennessee was not going to do what it needed to do to make the college football playoff. Tennessee would sabotage itself by looking ugly against UTEP. However, just when it looked like UTEP could make this a game by going up early 3-0 in the first quarter, they miss a field goal. Tennessee, after having had to punt on their first 3 possessions, finally gets what it needed to get to score. So, 2 plays, just 2 plays, really set Tennessee in motion to begin this onslaught. With the scoreless first quarter, late in the first quarter, Tennessee and UTEP. UTEP has the ball 4th and 12 at the Tennessee 32, and UTEP tries a 49-yard field goal. It's no good. 3 plays later, Tennessee has Nico Eberle has been sacked, and Dylan Sampson gets a 6-yard run, but a 3rd and 8 comes from Tennessee's own 34. And you're just certain that Tennessee is going to probably be forced to punt again because the offense is looking horrible, and this team just didn't look ready to play in this game, and you're ready to just leave the stadium probably if you're there because you're like, what show are they putting on? But finally, Nico Eberle, who was 2 of 6 to that point and looked terrible, completed a pass to Dylan Sampson over the middle for 13 yards to the Tennessee 47. Now, that didn't seem like a lot at that time, but that sparked a drive in which Nico Eberle went 5 of 5 and led Tennessee on a touchdown drive as he then threw a 10-yard pass to Brew McCoy. He threw a 10-yard pass to Miles Kitzelman, and then he threw another short 12-yard pass to Dylan Sampson, and then Sampson ran it in for a touchdown to put the Vols up 7-0, and that's when the onslaught began. By the way, Nico Eberle continued to be red hot as he completed 2 passes on the next drive to set up 3 passes on the next drive to set up another touchdown, which he threw to Squirrel White. Following me here, guys? Nico Eberle went from 2 of 6 to being unable to miss. And then on the next drive after that, he completed a 6-yard pass to Brew McCoy. The point of all of this is to say, Nico Eberle, after that 2 of 6 start and the 3rd down and 8 that came, went on a run of 9 straight completions, which began the onslaught. So the turning point was very clearly that Tennessee and Nico Eberle getting the UTEP missing the field goal, and then Tennessee converting a 3rd and 8 on the ensuing drive to be able to go down the field and score. It was a big day. It was a big performance, and you really have to admire how Nico Eberle rebounded. All right, so let's get to takeaways from Tennessee's win over UTEP. The post is up now. I will have the turning points written later after the show, but I got the takeaways up written now. So 5 takeaways from Tennessee's win over UTEP. The first one, the slow start was almost forgotten. Now, I want to point this out to you guys. UTEP Miners head coach Scotty Walden was head coach of the Austin Peay Governors last year when Austin Peay faced Tennessee. I don't know if you guys remember, Tennessee had a legendary, memorable opener against Virginia. They blew them out. Everybody thought the offense was going to continue its form with Joe Milton at quarterback and not Hendon Hooker. And then the next week they go play Austin Peay, and they win an ugly game 30-13. 2 things happened in that Austin Peay game. Scotty Walden introduced the 3-3-5 to Tennessee, which has seemed to be a bit of a kryptonite for Josh Heupel in the Vols. And Scotty Walden, which he does, threw every bag of trick he has at the Vols early on to try to take control of the game. He did it again, had a bunch of disguised defensive schemes, did everything he possibly could to try to throw his bag of tricks at the Vols to make this game ugly, and it actually worked in the first quarter. More importantly, it was very clear Tennessee was not in the right headspace because while they had to focus on a bad team like UTEP, they really had to pay attention to the 2 most important games related to their college football playoff standing going on at the same time. Tennessee and UTEP kicked off at 1, Indiana and Ohio State kicked off at noon, and Florida and Ole Miss kicked off at noon. So even the fans in the stadium were were more dialed into those games than they were the Tennessee UTEP game, and I think the players were too. So the distractions of those extra games, plus the emotional distractions of senior day, if you want to throw that in there, plus how Scotty Walden does things against big opponents like Tennessee, it led to Tennessee having a very bad first quarter. They regrouped, And then they joined in an onslaught when they scored touchdowns on 7 of their next 9 possessions, including one with Gaston Moore in there. So give them credit for regrouping, but honestly, the horrible first quarter can easily be explained away. All right, so what's the next takeaway, though? What happened? Well, as they went on that run, you have to say it's a pretty good senior send-off, guys. We got to say it was a pretty awesome senior send-off. I'm going to send a shout-out to, and this is a big one, a shout-out to Brew McCoy. Had struggled, hadn't had a touchdown catch all year, came away with 2 touchdown catches in this game, which was very, very big. On top of the 2 touchdown catches, Brew McCoy managed to have 4 catches on 6 targets for 37 yards. Along with Brew McCoy, Amari Thomas came in. He has been with Tennessee since the Pruitt days, the Jeremy Pruitt days, and he had a key tackle for a loss. You felt good for him on that as the leader and the anchor of the Vols on defense. And then the offensive line, Cooper Mays and Javonte Spraggins, who also had to labor through the Jeremy Pruitt years, paved the way for over 200 rushing yards, a collective by Samson, Peyton Lewis, and Cam Selden, and Eberle himself, and 4 rushing touchdowns. Cooper Mays has been the leader, an anchor of this team for a while now. I would say 2 years, maybe 3 years strong. Javonte Spraggins has been one of the most reliable run blockers, and they really showed up in this one, and you have to give them a lot of credit. We talk a little bit about the tackles. That was a little bit of a different story. I'll get to that in a second, but you have to give credit to the seniors for their send-off, and the ones who deserve the send-off got it in their final game. And these are the ones who are out of eligibility, by the way. Moving on, the passing game finally looked like a passing game it needs to look like in a Josh Heupel offense. Nico Iamaleava, after starting 2 of 6 in the first quarter, reeled off 9 straight completions, and he finished 17 of 23 for 209 yards. And yes, it was a career high 4 touchdown passes for him. Huge credit to Nico Iamaleava for doing that. And he had 7 runs for he had 36 rushing yards, by the way. Now, part of the passing game is the pass protection. That was an issue. Again, as it's been all year, Iamaleava was sacked 3 times in this game. But he threw the ball well. He remained poised even as he was getting hit early. And despite getting sacked 3 times, he still managed those 36 rushing yards. So you got to give him some credit. He had a 29-yard run at one point. So Nico Iamaleava did an amazing job in this game. I know it was just UTEP, but it is a confidence booster. Completed 74% of his passes, despite 33% in the first quarter. If you're doing the math, guys, Nico went 15 of 17 after that 2 of 6 start. That's incredible. You have to give him credit for that. So that's a big takeaway. A big shout out to the passing game and the defense. But yes, the tackles do still have some work to do. All right, next, big plays on defense. After having a rough game last week that was still there for the taking, the defense, okay, I'm not going to say they returned. They were playing UTEP, but they made sure to have the big plays. And they never quit playing, even in the first quarter when the offense was struggling. That was the bright spot for Tennessee consistently, as it's been all year. Jermon McCoy had an interception on the second drive of the game. James Pierce had 2 sacks. He had a key sack on a 4th down that was big. Tennessee had another 4th down stop later in the game. And Ricky Gibson III forced a fumble, and it all closed with John Slaughter coming away with an interception. So John Slaughter, Ricky Gibson III, Jermon McCoy, James Pierce Jr., all having big plays, plus the defensive line getting a 4th down stop. That was huge. All of those plays except for McCoy were plays that happened and part of the 7 of 9 touchdown drives that happened for Tennessee's offense. So they were huge in that. They deserve a ton of credit. The defense was, again, it was big play after big play. I can't say enough for this defense. There weren't a lot of negatives on that from this game. The only 2 I'm talking about are the slow first quarter, and the tackles struggling a little bit with their pass blocking. But the defense did what they needed to do and pitched another shutout. You can't. Yes, last week they gave up 30 points to Georgia, but look, overall the defense has been very, very, very good this year. So you have to give them credit. They forced 3 turnovers, and the Tennessee offense didn't turn the ball over once. And Tennessee's defense came away with 4 sacks, 15 tackles for a loss. And we got to start having the conversation, guys, if Jermon McCoy and Ricky Gibson III is the best cornerback duo in the history of Tennessee football. I'm not saying any one of them are the best themselves, but together, collectively, I've never seen a duo that good. Give a lot of credit where credit is due with those guys. And the final takeaway, special teams. The punt game in particular. The obvious one is Boo Carter. Boo Carter had a 38-yard return that should have ended up in a touchdown, but came just short. And he had an 18-yard punt return. Both of them set up Tennessee football touchdowns. But it wasn't just that helped Tennessee. Jackson Ross did a superb job punting. Again, I said the punt game in general on both sides did a superb job punting in this game. He punted 6 times. 2 went for beyond 50 yards or 50 yards or more, and 3 were pinned inside the 20, 2 inside the 10. Jackson Ross did an incredible job on his punting. UTEP, meanwhile, I don't know why, but decided to do a collective of punters. Joe Bowman punted 3 times. Adam Jacklett punted twice. And there was a pooch by Skylar Lockley, the quarterback, at one point, which was kind of funny. Hadn't seen that in a while. Only 1 went inside the 20, and they had a 17-yard punt at one point. So Tennessee got the short field thanks to the punt game on both sides of the ball and Boo Carter's incredible return game. Boo Carter is a star. Tennessee, again, beats UTEP 56-0, and they do it despite a slow start that was due to Scotty Walden and their distractions. They do it with the senior send-off as Brew McCoy catches 2 touchdowns. Amari Thomas has a tackle for a loss. Cooper Mays and Javonte Spraggins paved the way for over 200 rushing yards. They do it with an elite passing game with Nico Iamaleava, after going 2 of 6, completes 17 of 23 for 209 yards and a career-high 4 touchdowns. And also that elite passing game, though, did have a drawback with the tackle struggling a little bit, as they have all year. But they also do it with big plays on defense, and they do it with an elite punt game. We're going to close the show out with the Torchbearers and the report card. Before we do that, again, Last Look is brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor & Hahn.
To visit cctis.com. The information you need is easy to access, and setting an appointment is as simple as clicking the tab. Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor & Hahn, and Eye Care Optical at cctis.com. Simply the best.
All right. Let's get to the Torchbearers, the top performers from Tennessee football's win over the UTEP Miners. And quite honestly, a lot of this was a collective effort. A lot of people step up, and I'm giving these out somewhat as people who represented position groups that played so well. But because again, there's just a lot of people, and it's hard to ignore them all. But the first one is Jermon McCoy. He is the best lockdown corner Tennessee has had in maybe a generation. And he's going to go up there among the best of all time. I mean, he's the best I've seen since Dwayne Goodrich. You can make a case for Alontae Taylor a few years ago. Bryce Thompson, his freshman year, before he had all of these other issues. But Jermon McCoy had another interception in this game. He played shutdown football on the outside. He was a superstar, and he is, yes, one of the best players on this team, one of the most valuable. He easily gets a helmet sticker, and I have him as one of my Torchbearers. But he's not the only one at cornerback. Ricky Gibson III came in, and he forced a fumble that Dominic Bailey recovered, which helped Tennessee begin its onslaught. That was after their first touchdown. Ricky Gibson III had a forced fumble in this game. He's the number 2 cornerback. He also had a pass breakup, and he had a tackle for a loss. So we did it all. 4 tackles overall, 4 solo. Again, tackles is not the best stat for defensive backs, particularly cornerbacks, but a tackle for a loss is, a pass breakup is, and a forced fumble is. He hit the trifecta. He did it all. Again, guys, I'm insisting this. I'm not so sure where Ricky Gibson III goes among great Tennessee cornerbacks. Jermon McCoy has a place among the greatest, but that doesn't mean he's number 1. But I think these two together is the best cornerback duo in the history of Tennessee football. I'm not so sure there is a close second. I'm just going to be honest with you. I'm not so sure there's a close second. These two are just incredible together. They do a lot of great work, and they're going to be together next year. So you guys should be very excited about the cornerbacks. Now, I'm going to give some credit real quick to the rest of the secondary who didn't make this list, because John Slaughter had an interception, deserves credit. Andre Turrentine had a tackle for a loss. Jalen McMurray was in on quite a few plays. Jacoby Thomas was in on quite a few plays. Christian Charles had 4 solo tackles, and Boo Carter, I keep bringing him up, guys. Boo Carter had 6 total tackles, 5 solo tackles, and assisted on a tackle for a loss. But I bring up Boo Carter to say Boo Carter is a torchbearer. Boo Carter came so close to running one back in this game, guys. Again, he had 3 punt returns for 61 yards. He had a 38-yard punt return, and he had an 18-yard punt return, and that's just on special teams. He also assisted on a tackle for a loss. You have to give Boot Carter credit. I told you guys he was emerging into a superstar, and he has emerged into more and more of a superstar, and I'm telling this guy is going to be an All-American, at least All-SEC by next year, provided he stays healthy. Maybe All-American, definitely All-American by year 3. He should absolutely be a freshman All-American. There is no doubt that he should be a freshman All-American. Boo Carter is a superstar. This guy is incredible. A couple more. Nico Iamaleava is a torchbearer. Now, I'm not giving Nico Iamaleava out of this world grades for how he played because of that first quarter, although a lot of that wasn't his fault, but he did miss on some very clear throws, just had some very clear misses. I think Scotty Walden confused him a little bit, but he regrouped after a 2-6 start, finished 15-17. His mental toughness, which I've questioned at the time, was clearly on display. I don't care if it was against UTEP. To regroup like that when things haven't gone your way all year, you deserve a lot of credit. 4 touchdowns, a career high 4 touchdowns. He spread the ball around. Ethan Davis caught a touchdown. Squirrel White caught a touchdown. Brew McCoy caught 2 touchdowns. Nico Iamaleava is absolutely a torchbearer. He's one of the top 5 performers in this game, and he absolutely deserves a helmet sticker. Nico Iamaleava is, I don't want to say he's turning a corner, but he has looked better in these last few games. He maybe didn't look as great against Georgia last week, but the opportunities weren't there as much. There were other issues at play. I'm telling you guys, Nico Iamaleava is doing an incredible job. He is going to get better. He's finally showing the promise that everybody wants him to show. So with that, Nico Iamaleava is also a torchbearer. Moving on, and this is the final torchbearer, and he's the player of the game. And that guy is James Pierce Jr. I mean, guys, you guys were questioning his play at the beginning of the year. I'm not saying you guys, but many people were, okay? And I thought that was absolutely ridiculous. It was absolutely unfair. James Pierce was dictating blocking schemes, so he wasn't getting the opportunities to get the sacks that he wanted to get, and it was holding him back, okay? I had been saying that the whole time. Didn't hold him back today. Came away with 2 sacks, 2.5 tackles for a loss, a pass breakup, 4 total tackles, 3 solo. The key is James Pierce had an amazing sack on a 4th down play by UTEP that shut down the game. That didn't shut down the game. It was in the first half, but kept the onslaught continuing for Tennessee. James Pierce was amazing. Now, he did get banged up late. We did see him leave the game for a second. It does look like just an overextension. He did come back to the sideline and put his helmet back on, but he wasn't going to be put back into the game at that moment. Tennessee was dominating, and you're going to save James Pierce. But James Pierce is absolutely a torchbearer. He's a player of the game. And for all of you that question his production, I just want to point this out. James Pierce now has 7.5 sacks on the year, and there's another regular season game left to be played. Pretty darn good. His production is there. I told you they will come. Sacks can be like home runs, guys, where in baseball, where people worry about a slumping month for a player, but home runs oftentimes come in bunches. And then you wake up one day and you're like, oh, they were productive. You're waking up one day and you're realizing James Pierce had 7.5 sacks. So again, James Pierce, he is absolutely the star of this game, the best player. Tennessee as a unit had 4 sacks, but James Pierce was the biggest reason they were so dominant. Even though, yes, David Hobbs got in on a play, assisted on a sack. You want to send a shout out to him. You want to send a shout out to Jason Jenkins, who assisted on a sack. Jordan Burns and Carson Gentle assisted on a sack. Okay, so just a bunch of production all the way around from a lot of people. And Joshua Josephs came away with 2 tackles for a loss and a quarterback hurry on the other side. So lots of edge rushers deserve credit and defensive ends for how they played. But James Pierce Jr. was far and away the best player on the field. He's the best draft prospect. I don't care that it was UTEP. Getting 2 sacks like that was still a big deal, and he did it in a short amount of time. James Pierce Jr. is the torchbearer, the best player of this game. Want to remind you guys that the last look is brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. And our final report for this game, we're going to give out our report cards. And I want you guys give me some feedback. I'm going to give you guys what I think about it. Quarterback is an A-. Nico Iamaleava would have been an A+ after the first quarter, but those misses in the first quarter were too hard to overcome. Again, He was 17 of 23 for 209 yards and a career high 4 touchdowns on the game. But he also was 2 of 6 to start the game. That does mean he finished 5 of 7, but going 2 of 6 to start the game is why the quarterback gets an A-. And also, by the way, when we do report cards, we do it by the entire position unit. So we have to factor in how Navy Schuler and Gaston Moore played coming in the fourth quarter in reserve for Nico Iamaleava. Navy Schuler was 1 of 3 for 10 yards. Gaston Moore was 0 for 2. So that brings it to an A-. Still great passing by Nico Iamaleava, but the team as a whole, again, wasn't perfect. That's what we have to say. So quarterback does get an A-. Now, going to running backs, they get an A. Now, there were no 100-yard rushers. Dylan Sampson did have another touchdown run, but he only finished with 11 carries for 77 yards. However, the running backs get an A because they were so effective no matter what. Because Dylan Sampson had 11 carries for 77 yards and a touchdown. Peyton Lewis had 7 carries for 46 yards and 2 touchdowns. And then Cam Selden got in and had 9 carries for 44 yards and a touchdown. So those three together had 27 carries for 167 yards and 4 touchdowns. That is a really, really, really good day. That's over 6 yards a carry for the running backs. Oh, and Khalifa Keith had 4 carries for 39 yards. So actually, they had 31 carries for 205 yards on the day. Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, 31 carries for 205 yards. 31 carries for 205 yards. Running backs were an A. On top of that, Dylan Sampson was huge in the passing game. He had 2 catches for 25 yards. So he actually did cross the 100-yard mark from scrimmage in this game. So yes, running backs get an A. Wide receivers get a B+. Brew McCoy had the 2 touchdowns. Squirrel White had the touchdown. Nobody had over 50 yards receiving, though, and you didn't feel like most people got separation. Dante Thornton had 2 catches for 24 yards. Squirrel White 2 for 15. Mike Matthews had a 25-yard grab. Almost had a touchdown catch. Braylon Staley got in with a 10-yard grab. Chaz Nimrod had a target but didn't make a catch. Nobody was standout spectacular among the wide receivers. They get a B+ because they didn't do anything wrong, but I can't go A when no one stand out spectacular. So that's my only knock. Tight ends, they get an A-. Now, pass pro is why they get an A-. They were part of the pass pro issues in the first half. However, the tight ends, at the same time, we have to say, Miles Kitselman had 2 catches for 34 yards. Holden Stace had 2 catches for 30 yards. And Ethan Davis had 2 catches for 19 yards and a touchdown. They were targeted 6 times, and they had 6 catches as a unit for 83 yards and a touchdown. Tight ends absolutely get an A for how they play. Offensive line, B-. Interior blocking, Cooper Mays, Javonte Spraggins did what they needed to do. It was great. But pass blocking, the tackles, they got better as the game went on. But once again, Nico Iamaleava was sacked 3 times. It was very, very poor pass blocking. Because of that, I have to give this unit just a B. Can't give them an A. There were too many issues. Now, defensive line, A. They had 15 tackles for a loss because of the push. They only allowed 2.1 yards a carry as UTEP had just 81 yards on the ground. They got pressure all in the middle. They had, as a team, 4 sacks. James Pierce Jr. being the star of the defensive line was doing what the defensive line does after struggling last week. You got to give them credit for that. Huge credit to the defensive line. Now, linebackers, B. They stopped the run well, but Jeremiah Thielander was again out of position a few times, so we have to knock them for that. Arian Carter did have 3 solo tackles, 4 total, and we do need to send a shout out to Jalen Smith, who got in and had 5 total tackles, 3 solo, and 1.5 tackles for a loss. Caleb Perry also had 1.5 tackles for a loss. So those linebackers did make big plays. Caleb Perry had 4 total tackles, 1 solo, but at the end of the day, you just can't look past the struggles and the issues that that Jeremiah Thielander was dealing with. So because of that, linebackers have to get a B. I mean, I can't give anybody a C in this game, but if somebody was going to, because there was just no way to show a C in this game because of how dominant Tennessee was, it just didn't show much. But if somebody was going to get a C, let's just be honest, it was going to be linebackers, and you could possibly make that case. And finally, passing, secondary, I give the secondary an A. They did allow UTEP to complete 21 of 36 passes, but it was for 149 yards, and it was only 4 yards a carry. And one of them was a trick play that was a 27-yard pass from Trey Goodman. So, I mean, we can sit there all day and talk about how when you take that out, the secondary was mostly fine. The quarterbacks, they were very efficient at converting meaningless passes. Okay, J.P. Pickles was 10 of 15, but for only 72 yards. And Skylar Locklear was 10 of 19, but for only 50 yards. And then when you add in the fact that there were 2 interceptions between John Slaughter and Jamal McCoy, and the fact that Ricky gets in the third, forced a fumble, giving an A to the secondary. Now, special teams. And here's where the fun goes. All right, on special teams, Jackson Ross gets an A for punting. Now, you may ask, why doesn't he get an A+? And I will tell you why. He had 1 punt go for a touchback. That was the one negative. But he did have 3 punts in the 20, had a long of 52, 6 punts for 281 yards, averaging 46.8 yards per a punt. So punting does get an A. Would have been an A+ without that one that I'm talking about. Okay, next, kicking. Incomplete, but an A. All kickoffs went for touchbacks, and Max Gilbert hit all 8 extra points. Can't really say anything negative about that. So kicking is an A. There was the return game, which also includes the field goal block game. Now, they didn't block any field goals, but there were 2 missed field goals by UTEP, so give Tennessee credit for the pressure on that. And then there was a 26-yard kick return by Peyton Lewis, but we've talked about it. Boo Carter had 3 punt returns for 61 yards, a 38-yard return, and an 18-yard return that set up 2 separate touchdowns. And because of that, Tennessee's return game gets an A+. The strongest of the game. They gave them the short field. It was an incredible performance by the Tennessee football return game. So with that in mind, that is your report card. You got your Torchbearers. We got plenty of more coming out. Tennessee is, again, they complete their second undefeated season at home in 3 years, beating the UTEP Miners 56-0. At the same time, the Indiana Hoosiers lost to the Ohio State Buckeyes in a blowout, and the Florida Gators lost to the Ole Miss Rebels, the Florida Gators beat the Ole Miss Rebels, which has effectively put Tennessee back into the college football playoff. They have 1 regular season game left as they move to 9-2, and the message is simple. Beat Vanderbilt on the road next week, and they are going to be in the college football playoff the first year of the expanded playoff. Tennessee wins. So thank you guys all for tuning in. Be sure to hit like and subscribe. Once again, the last look is brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. Again, sorry, Dave Hooker could not do the post-game show with us today, so it was just me. But thank you guys all for hanging out and tuning in. It was a lot of fun. We will get back to covering things again. Off the Hook Sports, we are on weekdays live from 10 a.m. to noon Eastern every Monday through Friday. We will be back Monday to talk about this game and talk about what lies ahead for the Vols, because it now goes far, far, far beyond the college football playoff. With Kayla Calhoun, this has been The Last Look, presented by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn, and a presentation of Off